If you consider yourself pretty knowledgeable about the animal kingdom, maybe you can name every major family of marsupial or recognize obscure monkeys, well, prepare to meet a creature that sort of throws all your assumptions out the window.
I love that framing.
Today we are diving into an animal group that feels like a secret, a wonderfully weird one. The Couscous.
It's just so true. For how unique they are, they really should be globally famous, yet most people have never even heard of them outside of their little corner of the world.
And that's the real mystery, isn't it? The core question. How have we lived this long in a world this connected, and this entire family of tree-dwelling marsupials just flew under the radar for most of us?
And it's a big family, too.
Yeah.
We should probably clarify that Couscous is an umbrella name. We're talking about roughly 20 species here across 4 different genera.
All inside the family Phalangeridae,
Yeah.
which technically makes them possums.
Right. But we have to be super clear for you listening. We are not talking about the North American opossum you might find in your trash cans.
No, these are the possums from places like Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and Australia.
Exactly. And our mission today is really to unpack all of it. The taxonomy, the bizarre mix of features, and the unique lifestyle of these animals, with a special focus on a really elusive one from Indonesia, the Bear Couscous.
Mostly the Sulawesi Bear Couscous and its critically endangered cousin, the Taloud Bear Couscous.
That's the one.
Okay, let's just jump right in and unpack this creature, the Sulawesi Bear Couscous. It really does feel like it was assembled from the spare parts of other marsupials.
It's a genuine blend, yeah.
Yeah.
Physically, it's got this compact, really thick-set body with dense, soft fur. It reminds a lot of people of a koala.
But it's about the size of a tree kangaroo, right?
Roughly, yeah. And that name, the Bear Couscous, it's surprisingly fitting, even though it's obviously not a bear.
It's just a visual thing. The people who first described it, they saw its fur dark, sometimes grizzled gray on the outside with a really light belly and just thought, that looks like a tiny bear's coat.
And the face is so distinct. They had these almost squat faces, very short snouts, tiny furry ears, and then their most striking feature, probably.
You have eyes.
The eyes.
Yeah.
Big, round, yellow eyes. They give them this perpetually surprised expression. They're not huge animals, maybe 10 to 15 pounds, like a sturdy house cat.
But to really get how they live up in the trees, you have to look at their anatomy for movement.
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets fascinating. Their whole anatomy is built for life in the canopy, and the star of the show is their long, prehensile tail.
Prehensile meaning it can grip.
It's basically a fifth limb, and it can make up almost half their total length. We're talking up to 1.5 meters long nose to tail tip.
So it's not just for balance. And I read something really specific about the texture of the tail at the very end.
You did, yes. The part it uses for gritting, the very end, is bald. It has no fur on the underside, and instead it's covered in these rough, microscopic structures. They're called papillae.
Okay, so what do they do?
Think of them like tiny rubbery friction pads. Fur would just slip on wet bark, right?
Right.
But those papillae, they create the grip it needs.
That is a brilliant adaptation. So it works with their large, curved claws to hold on.
Exactly. But the result of all this specialization, it's not speed.
No, absolutely not speed. This combination of a strong grip and a heavy body just leads to these slow, deliberate movements.
Which is how they got their nickname, the slow-motion acrobats of the forest.
And that slowness, that pace, it isn't a preference. It's an economic necessity, which gets us to what I think is the core of the Bear Couscous story, the sloth factor.
This is where it all connects back to energy management. They're strict herbivores, folivores, and frugivores, to be precise.
Meaning their diet is almost all leaves, flowers, buds, and unripe fruit.
And here's where it gets really interesting, like you said.
Yeah.
That diet is incredibly low-calorie. It's nutrient-poor. If you're eating leaves all day, which are tough and take a ton of energy just to digest, you're running on an extremely tight energy budget.
Exactly. That's the evolutionary bottleneck right there. They spend so much energy just processing their food with specialized gut bacteria and long fermentation times that they have almost no energy left for, sudden bursts of activity.
So their lethargy, that sloth-like nature, it's a direct metabolic requirement. They just can't afford to burn calories quickly. It's a masterclass in optimizing for efficiency over speed.
And that defines their whole life. They're usually found in pairs, just kind of hanging out, eating, digesting. Very chill existence in the canopy.
And that slow pace carries right over into their reproduction. As marsupials, the female gives birth to this tiny, underdeveloped baby, a joey, which has to crawl into her pouch immediately.
And the time commitment here is just staggering. The joey has to be carried inside that pouch for about 8 months.
8 months, just think about that. It's an enormous dependency period. In high-energy mammals, the developmental clock ticks way faster. But for the Couscous, every calorie is precious, so they invest a huge amount of time into making sure one single offspring survives.
Okay, so we've focused on the Bear Couscous, but you said this is a big family, about 20 species. It feels important to look at some of the relatives to really get the full picture.
Absolutely, and one of the most stunning cousins is the Spotted Couscous. That's the genus Spotted Couscous. They're found a bit further east in northern Australia and New Guinea.
Right, the one's about the size of a house cat with those big round spots.
Yeah.
And it's usually only the males that have the spots, which is fascinating.
It is. And this relative gives us a really key contrast in lifestyle. The Spotted Couscous is overwhelmingly nocturnal.
So it's active at night. How does that show up in its anatomy, its eyes?
It's all in the eyes. The Spotted Couscous has slit pupils, like a cat or a snake.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're active at night, those slits are a huge advantage. They can adjust to all kinds of light levels, from twilight to total darkness. It gives them superior night vision.
And if you compare that back to our main subject, the Bear Couscous.
It's a complete break from the norm. The Bear Couscous is mainly diurnal.
Active during the day. That is so unusual for a marsupial.
It really is. And its eyes show it. It has rounded pupils, which are much better suited for bright daytime conditions.
So why? Why give up the safety of the night if you're so slow and you'd think vulnerable? There's a theory about that, right?
The main theory is that, historically, on its native islands, the Bear Couscous just didn't have many natural predators. So that constant pressure to hide in the dark, it just wasn't there.
Wow. So instead of hiding, it could exploit the daylight.
Precisely. Being diurnal lets them use sunlight to find their low-energy food. It's much easier to spot the right leaves and flowers during the day, which is critical when you move at a snail's pace, and every calorie is a victory.
And just to round out the family tree a bit more, there's also the Sulawesi Dwarf Couscous.
Yes, genus Couscous. It shares the island but has these huge, bulging eyes, almost like a tarsier. It probably lives a slightly different life, maybe on smaller branches.
And then there's the biggest genus, Phylloner, which has everything from a ground Couscous that lives in burrows, which is wild, to one that's almost totally white.
The variety is incredible. But it all kind of highlights how the Bear Couscous, despite being part of this big, diverse family, is still mostly an enigma.
And that brings us to the really urgent part of the story. These slow, mysterious, specialized animals are becoming incredibly rare. The lack of information about them and their actual scarcity are, well, two sides of the same coin.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, the threats are, unfortunately, very predictable. The number one danger is habitat loss from deforestation all across the Indonesian islands.
For a creature that moves so slowly, I imagine habitat fragmentation is basically a death sentence.
It is. A slow-moving animal built for the canopy can't just cross open ground to find another patch of forest. It isolates them, prevents breeding.
And then there's the direct human threat, poaching.
Yes, they're hunted for their thick, soft fur, which is highly prized, and also for their meat. And when you combine that pressure with their incredibly slow reproductive cycle, they just can't bounce back.
So what's the official conservation status for these silent acrobats?
The Sulawesi Bear Couscous, the one we focused on, is currently listed as a vulnerable species. But its neighbor, the Taloud Bear Couscous, is in even worse shape.
How much worse?
It's listed as critically endangered.
So this whole deep dive, which really started with the surprise of discovering this bizarre sloth-like possum-kangaroo mashup, it ends with a conservation emergency. A perfect example of an animal adapted to a pristine environment that is just rapidly vanishing.
It really forces you to think about the metabolic rules of life. We talk so much about how its low-calorie diet forces it to be slow and lethargic to conserve every bit of energy.
The ultimate trade-off for specializing in the canopy.
It is. So here's a final thought for you to take away from all this.
Yeah.
How fundamentally does the availability of high-energy food determine the speed, the intelligence, and the entire survival strategy of a species? And what are the hidden trade-offs for choosing a slow, specialized, low-energy life like the one the Bear Couscous leads? I think the answers tell us a lot about life itself.